That sounds like a great HFY premise. A full HFY story of the type you've requested is typically several thousand words long, which is too long to fit into a single ChatGPT response. I'll start the story with a cinematic opening, and you can say, "Continue," to receive the next seamless part. White letters slowly materialized. You have arrived early. Confusion spread through the fleet. Early? Before anyone could respond, the message disappeared. Communications returned. Weapons functioned normally. Life support remained stable. Nothing had been damaged. Yet every crew member aboard every ship shared the same unsettling feeling, that someone had just looked directly into their minds. Admiral Corvin refused to retreat. He ordered a reconnaissance shuttle toward Earth's atmosphere. The shuttle descended without resistance. No missiles. No fighters. No warnings. Its crew transmitted breathtaking images of thriving cities unlike anything the galaxy had ever imagined. Towering forests intertwined with gleaming arcologies. Rivers flowed through skyscrapers. Mountains held observatories reaching into orbit. Humanity had not merely survived. It had perfected coexistence with its world. Millions of people walked peacefully through parks while children laughed beneath alien-looking trees genetically engineered to absorb pollution before it existed. Autonomous drones cultivated forests instead of factories. Fusion towers produced limitless clean energy. There were no signs of poverty. No military. No fear. The scouts landed outside a quiet coastal city. Waiting for them stood a single elderly human woman wearing plain white clothing. She carried no weapon. She smiled. "Welcome," she said in flawless Dominion standard. The translators reported something impossible. She wasn't speaking Dominion standard. The translators had somehow learned her language before translating it. "I am Mara," she continued calmly. "We have been expecting you." The Carthoon soldiers surrounded her. "You are under Imperial authority," their commander announced. She nodded politely. "Gone." Consumed by expanding regions of absolute black. Gasps echoed across command bridges. Ward spoke quietly. "We are not the oldest civilization." Another section vanished. "We are not the strongest." More galaxies disappeared. But we are the first to notice. The darkness wasn't random. It was advancing. Slowly. Methodically. Like an ocean swallowing islands. Our astronomers detected it over 12,000 years ago. He looked directly into the camera. Deleted. No explosion. No debris. No radiation. Just absence. The kind of absence that should not exist. "We tried warning the young civilizations," Ward continued. "None believed us. Most were too busy fighting over borders that would soon mean nothing. So humanity vanished. We became silent because every transmission revealed our position. Every war weakened the civilized enemy." Ward nodded. "We call them the Null." At that exact moment, every alarm aboard every human vessel sounded for the first time. Not frantic. Measured. Controlled. A young officer stepped beside Ward. "Sir?" Ward didn't turn. "Report." "The Sentinel network confirms contact. Distance. 900,000 light-years." Murmurs spread across every alien fleet. That was impossibly far away. Surely there was time. The officer continued. "They crossed that distance in 42 seconds. The bridge fell silent. Ward finally looked back at Corvin. "This is why we remained silent." He drew a slow breath. "And this is why we finally answered." Beyond the rim of the galactic map, where there should have been only empty intergalactic darkness, a single point of blackness appeared. It was perfectly circular. Perfectly still. Then another appeared. Then 10. then 1,000. The sensors refused to classify them. Every AI aboard every alien ship shut itself down voluntarily. Before disconnecting, each one displayed the same final message. Do not let them hear you. And for the first time in 12,000 years, humanity ordered its fleet to battle stations. The order echoed across a fleet so vast that no living being could see its end. Battle stations. Condition Omega. No shouting followed. No frantic scrambling. Every human aboard every ship moved with practiced precision, as though they had rehearsed this exact moment for thousands of years. Massive vessels rotated into formation around the solar system. Planet-sized defense platforms unfolded layers of armor kilometers thick. Countless autonomous drones streamed into carefully calculated positions, weaving intricate geometric patterns across space. The sun itself began to change. Gigantic rings that had been disguised as harmless solar observatories awakened one after another, their surfaces blazing with energy. What every civilization had mistaken for scientific infrastructure was, in reality, the greatest defensive system ever constructed. Admiral Corvin watched in stunned silence. You've weaponized your own star. Admiral Ward shook his head. No. The human looked toward the sun with unmistakable pride. We taught it to fight. A heartbeat later, enormous pillars of golden plasma rose from the stellar surface. They twisted into impossible spirals before condensing into stable beams of contained fusion stretching millions of kilometers into space. The star had become a living power source for humanity's fleet. Throughout the galaxy, emergency beacons activated automatically. The oldest races reacted first. The ancient Lyrans, who had not launched a warship in 8,000 years, opened vaults hidden beneath their capital world. The crystalline Serethi deactivated every civilian transmission and began evacuating entire star systems without waiting for confirmation. The machine civilization known as the Axiom Collective unlocked files that had remained encrypted since the birth of their species. Each archive contained the same instruction. When Earth speaks, listen. Within hours, ambassadors from hundreds of civilizations pleaded for contact. The Galactic Concord called the first unanimous emergency session in its history. No one argued. No one demanded proof. Every elder species wore expressions of quiet terror. Because they remembered fragments. Stories passed from one generation to another. Stories everyone else had dismissed as myths. An elderly Lyran representative finally stood before the assembled council. My grandmother told me humanity once saved us. Confused murmurs spread. Saved you from what? She closed her eyes. I don't remember. The admission chilled the chamber. You don't remember? She shook her head. None of us do. Only that they asked us to forget. Across the hall, another delegate slowly raised four trembling hands. Our oldest temple says the same thing. Then another. And ours. Within minutes, dozens of civilizations reported identical legends. Humanity had protected them. From something none of them could remember. Earth had erased the memory. Deliberately. Back in the Sol system, Admiral Ward stood before a holographic projection unlike anything the Dominion had ever witnessed. The Milky Way floated before him in exquisite detail. Tiny blue lights represented every inhabited world. Green lights represented human assets. There were far more green lights than blue. Much farther than anyone thought possible. Hidden stations. Deep space fortresses. Observation arrays between stars. Entire fleets parked inside folded dimensions. Humanity had quietly occupied the empty spaces of the galaxy for millennia. Not to rule it. To watch over it. A young officer approached. Admiral. Ward didn't look away. Status? The Null have entered the galactic halo. Estimated numbers. The officer hesitated. No estimate. Ward nodded calmly. As expected. Corvin stared. You still don't know how many there are. Ward answered softly. We stopped counting after the first trillion. The alien officers exchanged horrified looks. 8 trillion. They don't build civilizations, Ward explained. They consume them. The tactical display zoomed outward. At first, the approaching darkness appeared empty. Then the sensors increased magnification. Every officer aboard every ship stopped breathing. The darkness wasn't empty. It was moving. An endless ocean of black structures flowed through intergalactic space without engines, without lights, without heat. Each individual vessel dwarfed moons. Behind them came objects the size of planets. Behind those, things so large that sensors refused to assign dimensions. Reality bent around them. Stars disappeared merely by existing nearby. One Dominion scientist collapsed after reading his instruments. They are not ships. What? They are wounds. No one understood. The scientist pointed to his display. They are not traveling through space. His voice cracked. They are removing it. Silence. Ward quietly nodded. Correct. He looked toward the impossible armada. The Null do not invade universes. They edit them. At that moment, every human ship transmitted a single encrypted burst. Not to Earth. Not to the fleet. Far beyond the Milky Way. Seconds later, replies arrived. Thousands of them. Then millions. Corvin frowned. Who answered? Ward smiled for the first time since the battle alert. Our neighbors. The hologram expanded beyond the local group. New icons appeared. Hundreds. Thousands. Entire galaxies lit up. Each marked in green. Corvin felt his knees weaken. There are. Ward finished the sentence. Other human civilizations. The Dominion officers stared in disbelief. You left the Milky Way. We left 10,000 years ago. How many galaxies? Ward's answer was almost casual. We've settled approximately 43,000. The bridge fell utterly silent. Every assumption the galaxy had ever held about humanity crumbled in an instant. Earth had never hidden because it was weak. Earth had hidden because it had become something far greater than anyone could imagine. And as the first wave of the Null crossed into the outer edge of the galaxy, 43,000 human civilizations answered Earth's call with one voice. The Watch stands together. Admiral Ward straightened his uniform. His eyes remained fixed on the approaching darkness. Then he gave the order humanity had waited 12,000 years to speak. Open the gates. Across intergalactic space, reality itself began to unfold. Reality did not tear. It obeyed. Across the dark between galaxies, space folded inward with mathematical perfection. There were no explosions, no brilliant flashes of impossible energy. Instead, the universe behaved as though invisible hands were turning the pages of an unimaginably vast book. The void opened into countless geometric gateways, each larger than a solar system. From every gateway emerged fleets unlike anything the Milky Way had ever conceived. Some ships were forged around captured neutron stars whose gravity had been carefully caged inside crystalline lattices. Others resembled living forests stretching thousands of kilometers, entire ecosystems drifting peacefully through space while carrying weapons capable of reshaping space-time itself. Planet-sized arcs escorted swarms of smaller vessels by the millions, each moving with absolute precision. There were no banners of conquest. No declarations of empire. Only one symbol adorned every hull, a blue circle crossed by a single silver line, the ancient emblem of Earth. The response continued. 1 galaxy. 10 galaxies. 100. Thousands. The darkness between galaxies filled with humanity. Observers from the Galactic Concord watched through quantum relays as green markers multiplied faster than their systems could display them. Entire tactical networks crashed beneath the impossible flood of Allied signals. An old Serethi astronomer whispered through trembling lips. "We thought the universe was mostly empty." Beside her, a human liaison quietly replied. "It was." The astronomer turned. "Was?" "We've been busy. On Earth, beneath the Himalayas, beneath layers of rock untouched for millions of years, a chamber awakened. It was older than civilization. Older than humanity's first written language. At its center stood a perfectly smooth sphere nearly 100 meters across. It had no seams, no inscriptions, and no visible source of power. For 12,000 years it had remained silent. Now, it began to glow. Thousands of scientists entered the chamber but maintained a respectful distance. President Elena Navarro arrived moments later. She spoke only 4 words. "Is it finally awake?" An elderly physicist nodded without taking his eyes from the sphere. "Yes, Madam President." "And?" The physicist hesitated. "It remembers." No one asked what it was. Everyone in the room already knew. The sphere wasn't a machine. It wasn't a weapon. It was Earth's memory. Long before humanity had become a spacefaring civilization, before cities or nations, before history itself, something had entrusted humanity with a responsibility. Not power. Responsibility. The sphere contained every memory humanity had deliberately erased. Every war against the null. Every civilization that had fallen. Every sacrifice. Human minds could not survive carrying those memories forever. So each generation passed them into the archive. Until they were needed again. That day had come. The sphere released a pulse. Not through electronics. Through consciousness. Across Earth, billions of people paused. Children stopped playing. Pilots froze at their controls. Farmers looked toward the sky. Artists dropped their brushes. For one breathtaking instant, every human remembered. Not with confusion. With clarity. They remembered standing beside species now extinct. They remembered galaxies burning. They remembered victories no history book contained. They remembered friends whose names had vanished from existence to protect the future. Tears filled countless eyes. Not from fear. From reunion. A little girl looked up at her mother. "I remember Grandpa." Her mother frowned. "You never met your grandfather." The child smiled softly. "I did." Halfway across the planet, an elderly man quietly saluted empty air. "Welcome back, Captain." No one thought these moments strange. Because everyone understood. Humanity had become whole again. At the edge of the Milky Way, the null finally moved. Without warning, the first black construct reached toward a nearby dwarf galaxy. It didn't fire. It touched. The galaxy vanished. Not exploded. Not collapsed. Every star simply ceased to have ever existed. Millions of years of cosmic history disappeared in an instant. Even the gravitational effects were gone. The surrounding universe corrected itself as though that galaxy had never formed. Gasps echoed across every command center. One Dominion officer screamed. They erased the past. Admiral Ward nodded grimly. They always start small. Corvin stared at the impossible emptiness. Can anything survive that? Ward answered quietly. No. Except us. Aboard the flagship TRS Resolute Dawn, the young lieutenant approached the admiral. Sir. Ward turned. The archive synchronization is complete. Casualty projections. The lieutenant's expression hardened. If we fight conventionally. He couldn't finish. Ward read the report himself. Probability of victory. 0.00003%. Probability of delaying the null. 12%. Probability of preserving humanity. Unknown. Even after 12,000 years. Even after 43,000 galaxies. The odds remained hopeless. Ward simply closed the report. Good. The lieutenant blinked. Good. We're finally using realistic numbers. Elsewhere. Deep within the advancing darkness. One of the immense black entities slowed. Unlike the countless constructs surrounding it, this one possessed awareness. It observed the growing human armada. Then, for the first time in over 4 billion years, the null hesitated. A ripple spread through the infinite black fleet. Ancient intelligences communicated faster than causality itself. Recognition confirmed. The gardeners remain. Unexpected. Correction required. Across the human command network, every alarm changed color. Not red. White. The highest level of warning. Earth Central AI, Athena, spoke calmly. Primary null intelligence has identified humanity. Every bridge became silent. Athena continued. It remembers us. Admiral Ward closed his eyes for only a second. So? He exhaled slowly. It wasn't asleep after all. The stars themselves dimmed as the colossal intelligence turned its attention toward the Milky Way. Then a voice echoed across every human ship. Not through speakers. Inside every mind. Cold. Ancient. Empty. Little gardeners. A pause stretched across eternity. You have grown. For the first time in 12,000 years. Humanity heard the enemy speak. The voice carried no anger. No triumph. No hatred. It was simply certain. Every human, from the oldest admiral aboard the Resolute Dawn to the youngest child standing in a classroom on Earth, heard the same impossible words. Little gardeners, you have grown. The universe itself seemed to pause. Even the stars dimmed, as though afraid to interrupt. For several seconds, no one answered. Not because humanity was afraid. Because protocol demanded silence until the speaker responded. On Earth, inside the Hall of First Dawn, billions watched a single doorway open. An elderly woman walked into the chamber. She wore no military uniform. No crown. No insignia. Only a simple blue jacket embroidered with Earth's ancient emblem. Her name was Dr. Miriam Solis. Occupation, botanist. The alien delegates watching through live transmission stared in confusion. A botanist? President Navarro smiled. Yes. Why isn't your greatest general speaking? Navarro's answer became one of the most quoted sentences in galactic history. Because generals fight wars. She looked toward the stars. Gardeners decide what deserves to live afterward. Dr. Solis stepped before a circular platform. The moment she placed her hand upon it, every communication system in 43,000 human galaxies synchronized into one network. She was no longer speaking for Earth. She was speaking for humanity. She looked directly toward the darkness. We remember you. For the first time. The null answered immediately. Then you remember your defeat. Dr. Solis nodded. We remember our mistake. A ripple moved through the black fleet. Confusion. The null did not understand. You mistake surrender for wisdom, the ancient intelligence declared. The botanist smiled gently. No. She shook her head. We mistake believing we had to fight alone. Across intergalactic space, trillions of human vessels shifted formation. Not into attack patterns. Into circles. Every fleet surrounded inhabited worlds. Every fortress positioned itself between the null and civilian populations. The Galactic Concord realized something astonishing. Humanity wasn't preparing to win. Humanity was preparing to protect everyone else. Even species that had invaded Earth. Even the Dominion. Admiral Corvin lowered his head in shame. "We came here to conquer you." Ward smiled faintly. "And today you'll leave as our guests." The null observed the formations. Still compassionate. Its voice echoed like collapsing galaxies. "Your greatest weakness?" Ward quietly replied. "It used to be." Thousands of tactical displays suddenly changed. Every inhabited world in the Milky Way became wrapped in brilliant blue spheres. Alien scientists gasped. Those weren't shields. They were space-time cocoons. Human engineers had folded local reality around entire civilizations. If the null erased ordinary space, the protected worlds would no longer occupy ordinary space. Humanity had learned to move civilizations outside the pages the null could erase. The ancient intelligence paused again. Longer this time. Deep inside the Earth's memory archive, another chamber unlocked. No human had entered it in 12,000 years. Athena's voice became unusually soft. Authorization accepted. The floor separated. Rising from beneath came something every historian believed impossible. Not a weapon. Not a machine. A seed. Barely the size of a human hand. Golden. Alive. President Navarro whispered. "So it survived?" Athena answered. "It always survives." Alien observers looked at one another. A seed? Nobody understood. Except Dr. Solis. Tears appeared in her eyes. She looked toward the null. "You've spent billions of years deleting worlds." The darkness remained silent. She continued. "And you've never understood the difference between destruction and growth." She raised the golden seed. "This is why you'll lose." The null finally sounded curious. "Explain." Dr. Solis smiled. "A machine repeats. A predator consumes. But life?" She gently closed her fingers around the seed. "Adapts." The seed dissolved into light. Not outward. Inward. Every human being across every galaxy felt a warmth in their chest. Every tree on Earth shimmered. Every blade of grass. Every forest. Alien jungles millions of light years away responded. Ancient ecosystems hidden beneath frozen oceans awakened. Life itself answered Earth's call. The impossible network humanity had secretly cultivated for 12,000 years revealed itself. Not a military alliance. A biological one. Every living world humanity had ever visited carried tiny fragments of the same ancient code. The garden. Galaxies lit up, not from weapons, but from forests, oceans, fungal networks, coral reefs, and microbial life resonating together across unimaginable distances. The null had mastered entropy. Humanity had mastered life. Athena spoke in quiet amazement. The living network has reached 100% synchronization. Even Admiral Ward looked stunned. "I didn't think we'd finish in time." Neither had anyone else. The null finally understood. For the first time since it began consuming universes, it encountered something it could not predict. Life was no longer isolated. Every ecosystem in 43,000 galaxies had become part of one living organism. Erase one. The others would restore it. Destroy a planet. 1,000 more already carried its complete biological memory. Delete a civilization. Its culture lived everywhere else. Humanity had spent 12,000 years ensuring that nothing truly lived alone ever again. The ancient intelligence spoke one final sentence. Its voice no longer sounded certain. It sounded concerned. You have made existence redundant. Dr. Solis shook her head. No. She looked across the glowing galaxies. We made hope impossible to erase. And as the first wave of the living network surged toward the advancing darkness, the stars themselves seemed to bloom with light, because for the first time in cosmic history, the universe wasn't merely defending itself. It was fighting back. The light did not behave like energy. It behaved like spring. Where the living network expanded, dead worlds stirred. Frozen planets hidden beneath eternal ice cracked open as oceans warmed without heat. Forests that had been reduced to ash millions of years earlier reappeared from dormant spores preserved in quantum memory. Rivers flowed across barren moons that had never known rain. Across 43,000 galaxies, every ecosystem became a single breathing organism, exchanging information faster than light through roots, fungi, oceans, and microscopic life that humanity had quietly nurtured for 12,000 years. The null advanced anyway. Entire walls of darkness swept forward, erasing stars from existence. Solar systems vanished without explosions. Nebulae disappeared before the eyes of horrified observers. Space itself became smooth and empty wherever the black tide passed. But this time, the emptiness did not remain empty. Seconds after each region vanished, tiny points of green light appeared within the void. 1. 10. Thousands. Then millions. The erased regions began growing back. Not as copies. As living space. The Dominion scientists screamed at their instruments. Impossible. Reality scanners confirmed what every equation denied. The universe was healing. Deep within the consciousness of the primary null intelligence, something unprecedented occurred. Confusion. For 4 billion years, every universe it consumed had obeyed a simple law. Erase. Advance. Repeat. Yet now, the erased regions refused to stay erased. The null examined the phenomenon through dimensions invisible to ordinary beings. There it found humanity's true achievement. Every living thing carried the complete blueprint of every other living thing. A tree on Earth remembered forests on worlds 2 million light-years away. Coral beneath an alien ocean remembered rivers that no longer existed. Even bacteria drifting through interstellar dust carried fragments of civilizations long thought extinct. Humanity had transformed life itself into memory. Destroy one memory. A trillion others restored it. The ancient intelligence finally asked a question. Not a threat. A genuine question. Why? Dr. Miriam Solis answered without hesitation. Because every garden loses flowers. She looked toward the blooming galaxies. A gardener doesn't stop planting. On the bridge of the Resolute Dawn, Admiral Ward watched tactical projections change every second. Human losses, minimal. Alien civilian losses, 0. Null advance speed, slowing. For the first time in 12,000 years. The impossible enemy had stopped gaining ground. Young officers smiled. Some even laughed. Ward did not. His expression remained solemn. Corvin noticed. What is it? Ward quietly enlarged another display. Far beyond the battlefield. Something enormous was awakening. Not another fleet. Not another intelligence. Something older than both humanity and the null. Athena spoke. Confirmed. The first witness has observed the conflict. Every human officer immediately stood. No order was given. Dr. Solis smiled gently. Purpose. She held out her hand. You were made to prune dying branches. She looked across the reborn galaxies. The garden no longer needs extinction. It needs caretakers. For the first time in 4 billion years. The endless darkness did not advance. It simply listened. And somewhere beyond the oldest stars, the first witness watched in silence, as the oldest enemies in creation stood at the edge of a future where the universe might no longer be defined by survival, but by the courage to let even an ancient destroyer choose a different path. For what seemed like an eternity, nothing moved. The living network shimmered across the cosmos like an endless web of emerald constellations. The black ocean of the null remained perfectly still. Human fleets held formation. Alien armadas waited in silent disbelief. Even the stars appeared reluctant to burn too brightly, as though the universe itself feared disturbing the fragile moment. Then the primary null intelligence spoke again. Its voice no longer carried the hollow certainty that had terrified civilizations for billions of years. Instead, it carried something no human had expected. Confusion. We do not understand purpose without consumption. Dr. Miriam Solis smiled with the patience of someone speaking to a frightened child rather than the oldest force of destruction in existence. Then let us teach you. A wave of disbelief swept through every alien government. Teach the null? Teach the devourer of galaxies? Even Admiral Corvin whispered, only humans. President Navarro quietly finished his sentence. Would try to rehabilitate the apocalypse. A few nervous laughs spread across command centers. The tension broke, not because the danger had vanished, but because humanity had reminded everyone that hope could exist even in the shadow of extinction. The first witness observed silently. Its presence filled the universe without occupying space. Then it spoke once more. The cycle may end. Those four words sent ripples through reality itself. Across 43,000 galaxies, ancient machines older than recorded history shut themselves down. Massive defense systems deactivated. Hidden vaults opened. For the first time in 12,000 years, humanity's emergency protocols ended. Athena announced calmly. Omega Watch concluded. Millions of human officers lowered their heads. Some cried openly. Entire generations had been born, lived, and died preparing for a war they believed their descendants would have to finish. Now, that burden was lifting. But peace would not come without one final trial. Suddenly, one section of the Null Armada ignored the command of the primary intelligence. A splinter faction. Billions of autonomous constructs accelerated toward the Milky Way. Athena's voice sharpened. Independent attack confirmed. Ward's expression hardened. So it begins. The primary null intelligence turned toward its own rebellious forces. For billions of years, every construct had obeyed without question. Now, some refused. The irony was unmistakable. The destroyers had discovered free will. And with it, division. The rebellious fleet transmitted only one sentence. Consumption is perfection. Before humanity could react, the primary intelligence answered. No. Every loyal null construct stopped. Then, they turned. For the first time in cosmic history, the null fought the null. The battle that followed became known simply as the Quiet War. There were no dramatic explosions. No triumphant speeches. Reality itself bent as ancient constructs collided across intergalactic space. Human fleets fought beside former enemies. Dominion warships defended Earth. Lyran Guardians shielded null vessels that had surrendered. Machine civilizations synchronized with living forests. The impossible had become ordinary. The galaxy no longer fought as separate species. It fought as one civilization. At the center of the conflict, Admiral Ward stood beside Corvin on the observation deck. The alien commander spoke softly. I came here to conquer your world. Ward nodded. I know. You saved mine. Ward looked toward the stars. My grandfather told me something before I joined the fleet. What? He said. Ward smiled. If your victory leaves fewer people alive to celebrate it, you chose the wrong victory. Corvin quietly repeated the words. The sentence would later be engraved in over 6 million languages. The quiet war lasted only 17 minutes. When it ended, the rebellious constructs were gone. Disarmed. The living network had wrapped them in self-sustaining biological matrices that prevented them from consuming spacetime while allowing them to continue existing. Humanity had built prisons before. This was something entirely different. It was rehabilitation written into the laws of physics. The primary null intelligence looked upon its former army, then toward humanity. Finally, it bowed. Not physically. Conceptually. Every conscious being instinctively understood the gesture. The oldest destroyer in existence had acknowledged another civilization as its equal. The first witness spoke for the last time. The garden is yours. Reality trembled. Then the presence disappeared. Not because it had died. Because it was no longer needed. Its purpose had been fulfilled. 1,000 years later. Children from 100,000 species played together beneath the restored skies of Earth. The old borders of the Galactic Concord existed only in museums. Former Dominion battleships carried forests instead of weapons. The Null, now known simply as the Keepers, wandered dying stars, gently dismantling unstable systems before they could threaten new life. They had returned to the purpose for which they had originally been created. On a quiet hillside overlooking the Pacific Ocean, an elderly Dr. Miriam Solis planted a small oak sapling. A young alien child asked, "Is one tree really important?" She smiled. "No." She pressed the soil around its roots. But every forest begins with someone believing one tree matters. The child helped pat the earth into place. Above them, countless stars filled the night. Not silent. Not afraid. Simply alive. And somewhere beyond the edge of the observable universe, where new galaxies were still being born, a faint blue signal quietly spread through the darkness. Not a warning. Not a military command. Just 4 words. The garden welcomes all. For the first time since the birth of the cosmos, the universe had no watchers, no devourers, and no endless cycle of destruction. It had something far rarer. It had guardians. And they called one small blue world home.